Oh, good morning. I think I figured it out. Oh, wow. Okay, well, I'm live. Um, there's a lot of buttons here. I don't know what they all do. Is there a way to mirror my camera? Because I feel like looking at myself in the reverse is so disorienting. Maybe I just need to not look at myself. I don't know. But I'm here waiting for y'all to pull up. I don't know where y'all are. Let me tell the internet. I've been going live early yesterday and today because these are days that I usually work my in-person job like in the afternoons, and it's like from 1 to 7, so I can't really be on I can't really be on live, and then after that I usually have things to do. So going early is just what it's going to be in the beginning of the week, and then as the week goes on I can do more in the evenings or later afternoons. But today I'll keep it short and sweet because I have a client at 11 a.m. and I'm excited about that. But yeah, we're here. It's October 1st, going live, day number 2. And actually, the moon entered Virgo this morning around 5 a.m. Central Time, probably. And I think that this eclipse is hectic as fuck. Hectic as fuck, meaning conjunct the South Node with the Sun and Mercury. And I think I haven't paid very much attention to the nodes before now, like the North and South node before now, because the person I was learning from didn't really talk about the nodes as much. And when she did, it kind of didn't make a whole lot of sense to me as far as how they were used in the present context. So I've looked more into Vedic descriptions of the North and South nodes to see like how they kind of describe those. Rahu and Ketu is how they're described. Rahu is the north node, Ketu is the south node. So with this one being conjunct the south node, I was immediately thinking, okay, the south node usually has to do with something that we are avoiding or going away from, or somewhere where losses occur, somewhere where um, things are being cleared out or pushed away in some kind of a way. And karmically, I think the south node Ketu is usually representative, like where it falls in your chart or where it falls, the sign that it falls in, and things like that. These are things that you maybe mastered in a previous lifetime, or things that you, um, not things that you mastered necessarily, but something, it's kind of like a been there, done that. I know what that is type of vibe. And so dealing with it in the present context is kind of uncomfortable. Um, to me, that seems like being reminded of all the wounds and all of the things that came with embodying that sign, that theme, dealing with stuff in that house, like probably came with a lot of pain and a lot of sacrifice. And so dealing with it in the current reality or this version of existence or whatever, dealing with the karma of that in this lifetime is like there's stuff you don't want to deal with that you just rather not pay attention to in that house or in that sign. And so instead you are more drawn to do the Rahu things, the North Node things. Those are the things you tend to be more obsessive, more compulsive, more driven and like consumed by. And so yeah, South Node stuff is usually stuff that we don't want to deal with. It's like the skeletons in the closet type vibes. At least that's what I'm getting. But I've also heard in Vedic perspectives, like some people think that the South Node is the more benefic of the two nodes, which is not really a great way to phrase it because both the North Node and the South Node are malefics. Like eclipses are usually more malefic. So I think because there can be some South Node interpretations that are like about liberation or spiritual cleansing or something like that, that people tend to think it might be more benefic, but it's not. I think with liberation comes great sacrifice. You're like having to give up everything you've ever known for liberation. You're having to like venture out into a world that you haven't experienced before or themes you haven't experienced before. And because of that, like there's a lot of pain, maybe a lot of grief or a lot of shedding that happens. So I don't know. I wonder how that is related to this particular eclipse because Mercury and the Sun, especially, like they just had a conjunction, I think yesterday or the day before. And that happened like right on top of Ketu, on top of the South Node. And you've seen the destruction going on around us, and you've seen like a lot of the weird misinformation things or obscuring the truth type things or just the general chaos and disruption going on everywhere, the lies, the deceit, and the deception, which some of that I think has to do with Venus and Libra as well. It's just a lot, fam. Like, can we catch a break? But I think there's some kind of maybe, I don't want to call it like a weird spiritual bypassing purification ritual going on, but it's kind of giving that. It's kind of giving like, bring all of this stuff up to the surface so that we have to deal with it. We can't ignore any longer or just vote our way out of climate crisis. Like Earth doesn't give a fuck if we vote. Earth doesn't give a fuck about democracy. Um, Earth doesn't give a fuck about really how we feel about anything. It's just, hey, these are the consequences of your actions. Deal with it. So it's not that I necessarily think we're being punished or anything like that, but we're witnessing and dealing with the consequences of capitalism and using fossil fuels and natural resources that are inexhaustible or that are limited in resource and that are non-renewable. We only have it once. Earth is a resource that, well, Earth is maybe more of an infinite resource, but humanity can only exist in these conditions for so long. So I really feel like the Virgo aspect of this. Hi, Tom. Good to see you. Yes, applying astrology to liberation. I mean, yeah, it's like it does feel like we're being confronted with so many issues at once that we can't avoid any longer the reality of our situation. Like we can't avoid the fact that our infrastructure is collapsing. We can't avoid the fact that our politicians have placed their attention and priority overseas to start these wars and start bullshit in the Middle East instead of using that money on us, on our actual like our taxpayer money going to fight all of these wars instead of dealing with the actual crises we're having at home right now. So this is where we are. And I guess the Virgo piece of it really is like, hey, this is the evidence. You can't ignore concrete, real evidence right in front of you. You can't not feel the effects of the world crumbling around you and witnessing the world crumble around other people and know that it's only a matter of time before you're next. It's really disheartening and it's also terrifying and there's a lot of powerlessness involved in that too. It's really stressful. So it's been hard. It's been hard to just kind of like sit back and watch and I think that's the point. You can only sit by and watch these things happen for so long before you feel compelled and moved to do something. And so maybe that's some of the K2 like discomfort and aversion and loss and destruction type stuff that comes with it. It's like a vacuum of sorts, just sucking everything up and muddling everything along the way. And I'm in Texas personally, so we've definitely had our climate disaster moments where um the ice storms have gotten so bad that power goes out for weeks and water lines freeze or get destroyed and people don't have access to water. People can't stay warm in sub-zero temperatures. Like it's gotten crazy here as well. So the fact that we're on a power grid that's limited to just the state of Texas instead of being able to get help from neighboring states is also a problem. And it's funny, I have thought about Virgo as far as like collective astrology being infrastructure, and that just seems to keep being the theme. Like our infrastructure is actually outdated, especially whenever it comes to, yes, our roads and our buildings and the inefficiency of all of these things, but also air. Like we've been talking about clean air with COVID and these ongoing pandemics. We've been talking about needing better like public transportation infrastructure so that we don't have to rely on cars and sitting in traffic for so long and everybody can't drive. We've been talking about the actual way that homes are built to not be very efficient with heating and cooling being a problem, especially if we're dealing with more climate disaster and unstable temperatures or uncharacteristic temperatures. So, there's a lot of things that we could improve on if we were to redirect our funds towards society, towards our Western, our supposedly superior Western civilization. But instead, what we seem to want to do is create all of this artificial intelligence that uses up all of our water because that makes sense, right? Um, I saw like some AI clips this morning of children dressed in these costumes, and this is all AI, so it wasn't real, but they were like doing runway dressed in bacon and egg costumes, like breakfast items. Children doing runway wearing breakfast items. Like, why is that what we're doing with AI? I feel like if we were gonna use AI, artificial intelligence, in all the ways that it exists, it could at least do something that makes our lives better, and makes it to where people don't have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and just make life more efficient. And then we could actually do something with like a universal basic income or I don't know, literally anything else besides terrible memes and internet video clips to go viral. I'm tired of seeing bowls of chocolate chip ice cream or bowls of cookies and cream ice cream turn into puppies or turn into panda bears. It's like it's weird. But the other part of this with the North Node then being in Pisces, Rahu being in Pisces, and Saturn is going to move into Pisces next year. Like all of this Virgo stuff is like the tangible consequences and the tangible evidence of all of these things in our failing infrastructure and this weird technology stuff. But then the Pisces side is like how all of this really is distorting our perception of what's real and distorting our perception of reality and withholding so much context and so much truth from us about what's actually going on that now we can't even discern what's real and what's fake. And I do think that's going to be a lot of what Saturn and Pisces is over the next 3 years, especially like next year when we have Saturn in Pisces with Jupiter in Gemini and Mars in Virgo. Like, y'all, I did the 2025 iCals and they're available in my store if you want to have the transits for the year imported directly into your phone. They're $4 each. Um, but yeah, there's a point next year where we'll have those three transits and then other planets, I believe, in Virgo at the same time. And that Mars Saturn opposition between Saturn and Pisces and Mars and Virgo, like, and Jupiter and Gemini, like, it stresses me out personally because I'm a mutable person, but it stresses me out for all of us because it just seems like the misinformation and disinformation and the crisis of understanding and misunderstanding one another, but just the gaslighting. Like the gaslighting will be so bad during that time. And this is not me being like doom and gloom, but it's like the gaslighting is already bad So to add more mutable planets in the sky, and especially like mutable planets that are actively trying to remove context and withhold truth, like, are we going to know which way is up? And this is like next August and September, I believe. And I do have a post about that on my Patreon as well for subscribers. I have listed out all of the major transits for 2025. And yeah, that mutable madness stuff, I'm just not looking forward to be completely honest. We already have a distorted perception of reality, and we already have um, trouble discerning what's real and who we can trust. So to know that our heads will only be spinning more, my hope is that it gets to a point where something breaks, not something breaks, but like something shifts in the sense that like things get so bad we have to do something about it, and during that time maybe that would be competing sources of truth or something like that, and maybe having enough evidence or data or consensus around a reputable source that maybe we start to trust that more. But I really think a lot of it is us having to trust each other, because the people with power and people in the technology, in the business, tech businesses and stuff like that, are not necessarily interested in the truth. They are interested in getting us to use their apps longer, which usually looks like creating more discourse and distrust between each of us, so that we spend all day arguing on the app instead of actually learning how to trust each other and listen to each other once again. So I don't know. I think learning to be better listeners and to better vet our sources and to ask questions to deepen our understanding of something will be really, really important from this moment moving forward. Because if we just take the information that we're seeing at face value, um, we will be deceived and we will be misled and misinformed. We'll only be getting a fraction of the truth, and that fraction of truth will probably be heavily biased by whoever it is telling the story and the narrative. So we'll have to get really good at nuance, I think. Really good at nuance and really good at pressing, I don't know, pressing for truth and for clarity. So I think this eclipse, and then we have one more eclipse, I believe, in Pisces in March. That will happen after our first Leo eclipse next year. Um, that'll be our last eclipse, and then we move into Leo and Aquarius eclipses after that. And I haven't even started to think about those, to be honest, but I do think it will force some kind of a shift or change after the years we've just had with Saturn and Aquarius, making very loud and clear, or rather giving us language for our experiences in a way that I think we've struggled to act on. And we've maybe spent too much time focusing on language at this point and talking about things and educating people that the time to act is upon us. So I hope the eclipses in Leo and Pisces, in Leo and Aquarius, um, bring action in and change in the direction of self determination. But I don't know, because the whole thing with that is that the Aquarius, the node, I think it might be the north node, is in Aquarius. I should look. I think the north node will be in Aquarius and the south node in Leo. Uh, and so then Saturn will be answering to, yeah, that's correct. Rahu in Aquarius and Ketu in Leo. But that means the north node will be answering to Saturn in Pisces, and then the south node will be answering to the sun. And then the sun is going to change signs once a month, like it always does. And I wonder what that will mean. Like, it'll be Saturn and Pisces the whole time that the north node is in Aquarius. But then with the sun constantly changing, like, I guess that would be our relationship to, I was going to say our relationship to truth, but actually since what the sun does is shift our focus and shift our perspective in a sense onto different things depending on the sign that it occupies and then depending on the house that it's transiting in your chart. I guess our relationship to our embodied experience and our somatic experience of reality and how that contrasts from maybe what we're being told about reality. Like the discrepancy between what it feels like is happening, what we're witnessing versus what we're being told, and how we perceive things being at odds with, is it at odds? The opposition itself is like, well, let me back up. So, and here I am on an astro ramble. Um, if the nodes themselves are representing something that we need to come into like right relationship with on both ends of the extreme, like there's the extreme of really wanting to go towards and obsess and dive and deep dive and be consumed by things on the Rahu end, like this insatiable appetite, and then the Ketu end being just like wanting to get rid of everything and get away from everything. If the thing that we're insatiable about, that we have this unrelenting desire for, is Aquarius, which could be the liberation and the freedom and the self determination, um, and self sovereignty of the people. And the thing that we're trying to get away from is this over reliance on authority figures on the Leo side, or this over reliance on, um, um, like, yes, authority figures, but well, maybe we could say patriarchy or power in the form of domination. And I don't know, trying to get away from that. And then maybe also our discomfort with being seen for who we are and our discomfort with having to come into a position of power. Like I'm thinking about the feeling of being pedestaled and how uncomfortable it is to be seen as an authority on something, or how uncomfortable it is to have to be a leader whenever you so deeply desire to be led, right? Something like that. And then you add in the layers of trust where if the thing that we're going towards is like maybe we really do have this deep wounded desire of somebody just tell us the truth, somebody take care of us, somebody tell us what this is, but we can't rely on our authorities, the people with power, to do that. We have to actively push against that and be so determined to tell our own truths and to speak on behalf of what we're experiencing physically, like really trusting our emotional reality, um, and our own personal emotional narratives that are in service of seeing ourselves in self determination, I guess, or something like that, as opposed to being overly reliant on institutions and authority figures to save us, and how that shapes our perception of ourselves and also our perception of each other. Because really, oppositions, they hold up a mirror. They're not so much about being opposites as it is like two sometimes contradictory or sometimes complementary ways of solving a problem. Usually that's what oppositions are. So you need a little bit of both to get the outcome that you want. So I guess, yeah, it could look like us having to become our own authority figures, not in the individualist sense, but um in the coalition building sense, I guess, or in the community building sense, or whatever it is. I know we talk about this stuff all the time, but whenever reality looks the way that it does in the present moment, you kind of our backs are kind of up against a wall. Like we are going to have to some extent, learn how to really fuck with each other the long way. Otherwise, things will continue the way that they are, and we literally can't survive that. Like people will continue to die. So I think to learn how to trust people is scary, and especially when we've been dealing with so much constant deceit and gaslighting. Being willing to listen to each other in a way that we could actually be moved and affected by is also scary because we don't want to lose our own sense of truth and reality. And I think that's a huge Pisces struggle, like letting your guard down enough to be affected by somebody else's emotional reality, but not so much that you abandon your own truth and emotional reality. We have to get good. We have to get better at holding both and seeing the connections between those two things and what the collaborative solution forward is instead of one person having to be right and one person having to be wrong, which to me feels a little bit more Virgo, like that there's only one way to do things, one version of the truth, one story, one set of evidence and data. Like, and the best way I can describe this, and I'll probably wrap up here because it's almost been 30 minutes, but I think the best way that I could describe what I mean by this is like when I'm thinking about the anti-vax movement, like the anti-vax movement to me feels very Pisces, and I actually believe that it's tied to Pisces transits from the past. Um, like the original book that came out by that woman who was trying to say that vaccines cause autism. I think that started during something Pisces related, but I don't remember what it was, and I should probably go research that. But it's this idea that, like, okay, people are picking up on something real that is happening. And if you have people who are, if they're being honest, who are saying, like, in today's context, like there are a bunch of people I know who are unvaccinated who aren't having heart attacks and strokes. It seems like all the people that I've seen having heart attacks and strokes are people who have been vaccinated. It's like, okay, well, if people are witnessing that in their own little bubble, that's what they're witnessing. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the truth, that that's the full context or reality of what's happening, but that's what they're witnessing. So to tell them that that's not what's happening when that's the only thing that they've seen is kind of where we run into all of these conflicts. But then on the other side of the spectrum, like for me, for example, I've had several vaccines. I know people who have had several vaccines who aren't even really seeming like they catch COVID very often, let alone having heart attacks and strokes. Like that's not what it looks like on the surface to me. But I'm still a person who believes that vaccines themselves aren't necessarily harmful, but COVID itself is more the danger. And so even in my own perspective, like it looks like people around me either aren't catching COVID very often or just haven't had it at all and they're outside doing everything all the time. And if I were to just believe that, that every day that I go to work and people seem like they're fine and me wearing a mask every day is useless, because COVID doesn't exist anymore. Like I could easily believe that too if I wanted to and think that it's actually neither COVID or the vaccines that are harming anybody and I'm delusional, right? And then there are also people who have experienced harm or have been harmed by the vaccines who know plenty of people who haven't been harmed by the vaccines and who keep catching COVID, or people who are unvaccinated who keep catching COVID. Like there are so many different ways to just look at your immediate relationships and deduce that something is the truth of reality. But that's only your experience and what you're witnessing. So you have to be able to hold that, like, yes, this is what I'm seeing with my own eyes, but this is also what hundreds of thousands of studies are saying. This is also what hundreds of thousands of people are saying. There's also millions of people who have died from the actual virus before the vaccines were even invented. Like, there's a lot of information that we have to account for, and we have to be able to hold that, yes, just because some people are having this experience, or just because I'm having this particular experience, it doesn't mean that this is the only possible conclusion that anyone could draw, you know? Or just because this one expert, with however many degrees is saying that, this is what the study finds, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing, the only truth that could possibly exist. It doesn't mean that anybody is wrong in what they're witnessing. It just means there might be some more information that you need to draw a proper conclusion or to draw a fuller picture of what's going on versus just relying on what you see. which is very Virgo to me. Virgo is very like, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. And Pisces is like, I don't know if that's what that looks like. Like something seems off just because it looks like a duck. I don't think that's really a duck. um, it's something Dana used to say all the time was like, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. But I think that's a bear in a duck suit. Like that's very Pisces to me. Um, and there is a role that your own body and intuition and nervous system play in all of that as well. Like you can feel suspicion about something, and the thing that you think you're feeling that suspicion towards may not necessarily be the thing to be suspicious about. So another example of that is like, I had an example of this with a friend yesterday, but I don't want to use their business as an example, so I'll use something else. Um, okay, so like, for example, I tore my Achilles last year around Father's Day, and I was just out for a walk. There was a situation with a dog that was off leash and unattended, and I was just minding my business. Dog comes out of nowhere. I'm trying to get away from the dog. I plant off my left foot the wrong way, and then my Achilles snaps, and then I had to eventually get surgery for that. So this happened a couple of days, literally like the Thursday before Father's Day that weekend, and I spent the whole weekend in pain and agony, like couldn't get any doctors to believe me. So then a year passes, Father's Day comes up again around that same time of the year, and I start feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. It could be easy for me to think that it's Father's Day causing me stress and anxiety because of my relationship with my dad, especially if maybe in the weeks prior, let's say me and my dad got into some kind of beef, and now Father's Day is coming up and I don't know how to celebrate him or what to get him, and I'm feeling all this stress and anxiety about it. It would be an easy conclusion for me to say like, "Oh, I must be feeling all of this stress because Father's Day is coming up. I must be feeling all of this grief because Father's Day is coming up and our relationship isn't the way that I want it to be." And maybe that's true because again, the context is a few weeks before me and my dad got into some beef. And this is totally made up scenario, by the way. But the reality could be that my body is remembering that around this time last year, we suffered from a really critical injury that left me being unable to walk for at least 3 months. Like before and after the surgery combined, I was unable to walk for 3 months, which led to a whole host of other unfortunate and very stressful situations that I struggled to deal with that brought up a lot of grief for me. So neither of those things are wrong, right? It's just depending on the context, the truth of the situation shifts. But my body is still trying to tell me that something is coming, something is wrong, something's going on around me that I'm anticipating. And the source of that is unclear to me, depending on what I decide to focus on. So, yeah, these are some ways that the Virgo Pisces axis can get kind of confusing. We can definitely be picking up on something that's wrong around us or in our lives, or picking up on some kind of pattern and not realize that there could be other causes for those feelings. There could be multiple causes at once. In fact, multiple things could be true. If I'm using my same example, like, yes, it's both my dad and I having this beef before Father's Day and my body remembering this really critical injury, this life changing injury that I had, all at once. And neither of those things is necessarily wrong. It's just I probably need to investigate a little bit more. And if I, you know, have a conversation with my dad where we squash the beef and now everything's cool on Father's Day, but I'm still feeling all of this grief, then it's definitely my body probably remembering the pain and suffering that we experienced around that time the year before. So, yeah, I don't know. Um, I'll leave it at that for today because I need to go prepare for my other call. But I'm curious what you guys think about this. Where are your Pisces and Virgo houses, and how are you experiencing the eclipse right now? For me, I'm experiencing this eclipse in a new apartment, and rent is due today. Um, I'm curious how that will impact my finances. and I'm curious how that will impact my relationship to or I'm curious about how my relationship to my living space influences my health and my anxiety and my experience of comfort and safety, stuff like that. Whereas the place I was living before was very hectic and noisy and lots of stuff going on all the time. And that was affecting my mental and physical health. So, yeah. If you have an astrotherapy journal, make some notes. See how this eclipse compares to stuff that was going on earlier this year. If you have um, been keeping a journal before the astrotherapy journal came out, this eclipse today connects to the ones that were happening in late March and early April. Um, Anything else? If you haven't gotten an astrotherapy journal and you want one, I have 6 left, I believe, and they are 25% off in my shop right now. You also get 30% off of a personal year ahead reading if you want to uh, figure out how to use your astrotherapy journal specific to you and which transits to pay attention to. That is a service that I offer. And all of those things are discounted right now. Once you purchase the journal, you get a discount link sent to your email. So, yeah. Other than that, free discovery calls are now live. You can meet with me for free for 20 minutes to um, figure out an issue in your life that you might want to get coaching or astrotherapy on and see if there's a way that I can be of service to you. And if not, I will be back here again tomorrow. I'm not sure what time, but follow me on Twitter or Instagram to stay up to date with whatever my brain is saying and subscribe to this channel so you can get notifications when I go live. Okay, that's all. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Happy eclipsing. Take care. Do some cleansing. Clean your home, declutter, and wear your protections. I will talk to you next time. Bye.